Alright, welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about cell phone bootloaders, but we're not talking about them in a sense of unlocking them or anything like that. Well, I mean, we are talking about unlocking them, but in a theoretical sense and not actually the action of doing it. So we're going to talk about right to repair and bootloaders, because I think this is a good way to bring one community together with another community. So we have a lot of people that like to mod their phones and do whatever they want with them because they own their private property and they want to do something with something they own. Wow, mind-blowing concept right there. So that's a community that has nothing to do with repair. They just, want to do something with their device they own. And in repair, we need access to bootloaders because, phones get viruses and, you need to install a new ROM on it. Things happen. There are reasons to have to install a new ROM on a phone that isn't just modification. You also have a repair side of that too. So that's where these two are going to come together in this video, and we're going to discuss that because I've seen a number of posts lately saying, hey, we need some sort of law that'll let us unlock our phones. That's right to repair, guys, and it's included in almost all right to repair bills that you look at, and we'll discuss that. So nowhere in it, at least from the ones I've read, explicitly say you have access to the bootloader, but they do say it pretty much explicitly. You just don't need those words. They're, those exact words. It's covered in other words, and it's not even like the one in Congress right now, HB 4006, Fair Repair Act, that explicitly covers it without having to say it. Like, you can read it and that there's no like interpretation that you can go, yeah, the bootloader's not included in this. Like, it's very clearly included in that. The bill that was in Massachusetts a couple of years ago, you'd have to put a little bit of interpretation in there to say it, but I think it's a pretty easy argument and a judge would uphold it. So we'll take a look at the text of those. I'm not an attorney. I'm a layman here putting my interpretation in on the law, but it's pretty cut and dry on the HB 4006. That law is written in pretty plain English, so it really doesn't take an attorney to interpret that one. First, let's take a look at this post on Reddit that kind of caught my attention and was like, yo, this stuff's already included. So I want to do a video kind of explaining this, so that way it's an easy reference to point to, that we can point to a different community. We can go, hey, I know you guys aren't repair guys, but y'all should care about right to repair because this includes you. You're included in this. Your community is 100% included in this bill. Like, y'all should back this with everything you have, and you shouldn't have, I don't know. I don't get any of the arguments against right to repair, too, but I won't get into that in this video. Okay, so here is the post that I saw. This one's titled, "There should be a bootloader unlocking standard passed by law that would require that would conveniently enable us to free our devices from proprietary nonsense." Yeah. There should be. It's called right to repair. This one, they're reposting somebody else's post here. And I replied to it, and I would say, you could argue that this is covered in HB 4006, Fair Repair Act, if Congress passed it. And then I quoted out the text in there. We'll take a look at the quoted text here in just a second. So yeah, let's just kind of take a look. I haven't read over this yet. Let's look and see if there's any anti-repair stuff in the comment section of this one. Because, we don't really need to read their argument of why you should have access to your bootloader. It's pretty cut and dry, plain and clear. You own your device, you should have access to change the software on your device. I mean, that's plain and simple. You own it, it's yours. They don't own your device anymore, you do. You should have access to the hard drive. We're going to put this in computer terms, or we're going to use computer terms here. It would be absolutely ridiculous if you bought a desktop from Dell or whatever. You got your Dell desktop in the mail, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you can't change the operating system on it. Like, you're locked out of the BIOS. You're not allowed to change anything. If you got locked out of the BIOS of your computer, you wouldn't buy it. Like, you just plain and simple wouldn't buy it because you own that computer. You should be able to install Linux on there if you want to. To me, it's really easy to say, like, you wouldn't buy a computer that you don't have access to your bootloader, let's say. So Why would you buy a cell phone that you don't have access to your bootloader? Well, it's a simple answer. There's no other option. You have iPhone, you don't have access to that anymore. Samsung, you don't have access to that anymore. And if they detect you changing anything in it, if they just detect you unlocking it, they lock you out of your camera on new devices. That's ridiculous. Now, Huawei, or however you say the name of the company, they're now locking you out of it. I do believe Xiaomi, who's the maker of my phone, I believe I do still have access to the bootloader on it. OnePlus is good about giving you access to the bootloader on OnePlus devices. But, there's just not a lot of cell phone manufacturers that are giving you access to the bootloader anymore. They don't want you to put your own ROM on there because they just don't want you to. Okay, well, normally you can find, just comments that I feel like they're trolls just, arguing the opposite side of it. But I actually couldn't find any on this particular thread here where anyone was like, yeah, you shouldn't have access to your bootloader. Pretty much everyone agreed. The closest I could find was this guy, Techo1234. And he basically goes, yeah, everybody here's going to agree with you. But you have to realize that, the majority of people don't care about access to the bootloader. For every one of us that are interested in that stuff, there's 25 people that aren't, is what he's saying. Probably true. It was actually probably closer. For every one, there's 100. But yeah, so that's his kind of argument. And he goes, so yeah, phone manufacturers aren't going to care. Exactly. The phone manufacturers do not care, which is why you can't vote with your wallet. Voting with your wallet is just simply not going to work with right to repair things. It's not going to happen because you're correct. The majority of people don't really care until they need to care, until their device is broken and they can't get their memories off of it, So this guy's argument is correct that, yeah, average people don't care. But your argument, your semi-argument against it is the argument for it. Is that, yeah, exactly. The manufacturers don't care. They're not going to do anything unless they're forced to do something. And that is legislation. Legislation is how you force big manufacturers, big companies, corporations to do something. Like, if we didn't have labor laws here in the United States, I am sure we would have a number of companies that would hire child labor and have slave labor and pay less than minimum wage. And I can say that because you see it all the time already happening, even though we have legislation. So it would be even worse without it. So, yeah, just food for thought there. Your semi-argument against it really is an argument for right to repair. Okay, so here is the original post that got everybody interested. This is just a screenshot. This is what I care about. This is some sort of petition, but the petition actually has the screenshot of the email. And this email is not a new email. This isn't a new thing. They've been locking people out for... Just to give a timeline on the stuff being discussed here. So the post on Reddit that I saw was from 3 hours ago. The post that they were referring to was from 6 months ago. And what this original post is referring to is a email sent out from Huawei from 2018. So this isn't like this is a new problem. It's just all of a sudden getting interest on Reddit. So that's giving you a timeline of what we're looking at here. So yeah, this is the email that they were talking about where basically Huawei announced that in 2018 they were going to suspend access to the bootloader on their devices, which is so it's been going on for a while now. This isn't something brand new. But yeah, that's what this whole discussion was about. And what I really wanted to show here was these bills and how right to repair includes access to your bootloader. So first we'll look at the bill that is currently in Congress that we really need more congressmen to act on, because right now it's only got 2 Democrats supporting it and nobody else. Yeah, they should act on this. I mean, they should also pass a budget, but they should act on this too. So first thing we will discuss is from line 11 to 12 on the second page. So on page 12, 11 and 12, says that the original equipment manufacturers in a timely manner and on fair and reasonable terms documentation, parts, tools, inclusive of any software information or embedded software. So tools is where I'm going to argue you have access to the bootloader, because the embedded software cannot be installed without access to the bootloader. If they were going to give you a ROM of it that you could install, like say, hey, my ROM's corrupt, I need the ROM. Like, okay, here's you the ROM. Well, you can't do anything with that ROM if you're locked out of the bootloader. So we're going to argue the bootloader is a tool, and it's not necessarily the bootloader itself is the tool. It's the access to it, you know, the PIN number or code or whatever that they're requiring you to have access to the bootloader to unlock it. That is going to be the tool. So let's go to tool. So just go, well, this is only 12 pages long. We'll just scroll down. So under definitions, we have tools. Okay, so on page 12, definition 12, the term tool means any software, program, hardware, implement, or other apparatus used to diagnose, maintain, repair of digital electronics equipment, including software or other mechanisms. So including software. Yeah, we'll call that bootloader the software that's a tool. Because, I mean, really the access to the bootloader is the tool. I feel like that's a fair argument to make here. You may have to argue it as it's, you know, the software. HB 218, which a lot of the other right to repair bills that they've been trying to pass in other states are based on this one. So this one is from Massachusetts from the 2019 to 2020 session. So this one did not become law. This one, you really would have to take some interpretation into it to give you access to it. This one, I think your best argument would be, hey, you have documentation on how to access the bootloader, because they have to, like there has to be documentation on it, because if, say, the one engineer that wrote the code dies, you no longer have access to it without documentation. So obviously they would have documentation. So you would definitely be able to argue like, hey, I need the documentation on how to get access to the bootloader if they're going to just refuse to give you that key. But honestly, I feel like the best way of arguing is tool. The reason why I say you might want to argue definition from HB 218 is because, or sorry, H218, is because this bill does not define what a tool is in it. It defines what like authorized repair centers are, digital electronics, fair, reasonable terms, documentation, embedded software. They list those in their definitions, but they don't list tools. The biggest problem you have with H218 is that they just leave tool open to interpretation. They didn't put a definition of what a tool is. So this one, you would have a harder time getting access to it, arguing it as a tool. So I would argue it as documentation, just because there's a definition of documentation and they would have documentation on how to access it. Would be how I would do it with this bill. I mean, that's just it. I wouldn't argue it as tool just because there's not a definition of tool. Tool is left open to interpretation, so they could say, hey, that's not a tool, and then you would have to go to court, and then that's up to the judge, who's probably, you know, a boomer that doesn't understand any of this, to try to make a decision on, well, is that a tool or not? And then you'd have case law. So I would argue it's documentation with that bill, but that's just me, which these are pretty much, both of these bills are what you're seeing all the other states look at in state level bills. Is there's something divergent of this, or there's something divergent of this, because this is pretty much the New York bill right here. So, you know, this is what a lot of them look like. And right to repair would give you access to the bootloader, is what I'm saying here in this video. Is you don't need a special bill. You don't need something special saying, hey, you have access to the bootloader. It's no. let's just pass right to repair. Let's focus our energy on right to repair, because right to repair is going to get you access to that bootloader. So there's no need to try to push a second bill that's going to explicitly give you access to bootloaders when, especially this bill, HB 4006, there's no way you can interpret this to not give you access to the bootloader. So focus your energy on this bill. Don't focus it on something else. Focus here. Consider writing your politicians. Consider talking to your friends and neighbors and everybody else you can think of about right to repair, because without getting more people interested, that then we'll just never pass. Okay, so before ending the video here, I just wanted to fact check myself on how friendly Xiaomi and OnePlus is to unlocking your phone. And I am not, endorsing these guys and saying, hey, you should buy one of these phones because they're repair friendly. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that these guys let you unlock the bootloader. And I fact checked it, and it is true. One caveat to that is Xiaomi makes you wait 1 week to unlock that, which is kind of silly. It's basically saying, I think you as the consumer are too stupid to understand what you're doing unlocking your phone, so you need to wait a week to do it. It's kind of silly, but whatever, at least they let you unlock it, and neither brand voids your warranty for doing that, as it should be. Your warranty should not be voided for unlocking the bootloader. Now, if you install a ROM on there that bricks the phone and you no longer can do anything with the phone, if it's your fault that it did that, like if your action caused that, that should void your warranty. It's the manufacturer's not responsible for your actions. So, yeah, I mean, that's just the way it should work anyways. Now, if you could prove that, hey, the manufacturer put a bug in there intentionally that would always brick the phone when you install a different ROM, that'd be a different story. But, for the most part, people bricking their phone is their own fault, not the manufacturer's. And so it should void your warranty. There are people out there that go, oh my God, they wouldn't honor the warranty after I did this. It's like, yo, you shot yourself in the foot and now you're upset that you're bleeding. Like, that's your own fault. So yeah, that's all I really have to say on that. I had seen a misinformation or a rumor that OnePlus voids your warranty, and that's just not true at all. They don't void your warranty for unlocking your phone. They've always been pretty friendly towards unlocking OnePlus devices because that's how the company started out, as it was an unlocked phone. They haven't gone away from those roots yet. I would not argue that either of those companies are actually repair friendly. They just let you unlock your phone. So that's not the argument I'm making. I'm not saying, don't say, oh, he said these phones are repair friendly, so I should go buy one. No, I'm just saying they don't lock you out of your bootloader, unlike most of the major manufacturers. So kudos to them for not locking you out of it and voiding your warranty, but it's still not like a repair friendly phone. Just something I wanted to add here in the end. I was just fact checking myself. So I hope you guys liked the video, and I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.